Kalyn Kahler of The Athletic, our former colleague, one of the true capital J journos covering the NFL.
Stop.
And I think more importantly for our perspective, Queen of the Tush Push.
Queen of the Tush Push. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm not sleeping well at night because the last possible, what might have been the last, we've talked about this, what might have been the last Tush Push with Jason Kelce was a failure. And that doesn't sit well with me. Doesn't sit well with me. I can't go into the off season with that, looming over me. Like, that's terrible. And if he
looming
retires,
over his career,
yeah, I mean,
I think that maybe that'll be what brings him back.
It might be. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because he's really.
Where are you at
serious
turkey-wise, Zach, right now on Jason Kelce retiring versus not retiring?
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I'm at like 51 to 49.
Really?
With him retiring, but just because like everything that you hear or that we heard after the season is that he's not coming back, but he hasn't announced it. And
I kind of think he might come back.
And he is deliberate. That's why. Well, I made it a coin flip.
Well, yeah, I know.
So So Schefter's report, like,
not a good report.
that was kind of rude.
Well,
What do you mean? Come on, that's not. It wasn't. There was no news to it. It wasn't.
What was his exact
his
phrasing?
report was that he told
said, like,
teammates
he told
the teammates after the game
Yeah.
that he was going to that it was his last game. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in the
I mean,
emotion,
that could be true.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
In the emotion of the moment,
Right.
that is the case. Now, it's phrased in such a way that doesn't like it was.
Yeah.
It was kind of taken to mean like that's his retirement announcement.
Yeah.
But he knows that that's how it's going to be taken.
Right.
Okay. But I'm saying, but like
And
factual.
he didn't.
You
Schefter
don't get to
didn't
have
say,
it both ways. I don't think. You don't get to half report something.
And he also didn't say according to, like, there was no
Right.
source.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It was just like teammate. It said he told
You think he's got
teammates.
every locker room bugged?
He might at
Yeah.
this point. Like, I feel like it probably came from like an agent,
A general manager?
like or I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe it came from teammates.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, so that's interesting. That's interesting that you're like that close on the split. Like, you really think it could go
I think
either
it's
way.
very much up in the air.
I'll say in the locker room after the game, that was the prevailing sentiment,
Yeah.
right? Like, I didn't report it as like told teammates, but teammates were talking after the game as if like this is Jason Kelce's last game. Like, I mean, I could recount my entire conversation with Lane Johnson after the game, and it was like, it's a shame that Jason goes out like this, right? So it's like I imagine the sentiment you have when you just lose a playoff game and he's hugging Stoutland, because I can believe he did not know yet, or he does not know yet. Like, he needs a clear
In
mind
his
to make that
process,
decision.
he wants to give it time.
Yeah. And in case that is his last game, he's savoring that moment with his teammates, with Jeff Stoutland. So we'll see. I was in that post-game locker room with Bo after the New Orleans game in January 2019. So you're thinking 5 years ago, and he was asked then, like, are you going to retire?
Yeah. Right.
Every year this goes on, and every year he does the same thing. And not to take away from, like, any reporters or whatnot, but he's always asked in these interviews, like, so are you going to retire? And I always think he's, he hasn't announced it yet, but he's waiting for your show to say, I am done, right? Like Jason's going to be very deliberate with how he announces
Yeah, he has lots of ways of reaching the public when he wants to make an announcement. Yeah. When he wants you to know, you'll know. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I feel like it'll be interesting, like, if he's hearing from networks right now. Because don't you think he would be kind of in high demand of, like, someone they'd want?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah. I've spoken to network executives about this. Yeah,
is he here
flex.
this week? Do you guys know?
Yes, he's here this week. Yeah.
Wow. Has he walked through here yet?
He taped his show the other day with Travis that came out today. He was playing blackjack last. He was at U2 last night.
Did he tape it in Radio Row?
No. They had a
They
separate
had to
place.
do a separate secret location this time.
Yes.
Last year they were like on
remember
Radio
that.
Row.
Yeah.
They are too famous for that now.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Because
and Travis showed up like an hour late last year. It was hilarious.
I remember you were doing that
Like,
story.
Yeah, which like 7,000 people read. Literally no one read that story. It was not a good story.
7,000 people's a lot of people.
Well, but it wasn't. It wasn't a good story. I wrote about the New Heights podcast, but like no one listened to the podcast last year. You know
Wait,
what I mean?
but are
And now if I
I
had
don't
written
think it was
the
like the
same
number
story
one
this
podcast
year,
last year. It just wasn't
Right.
Swift level.
are they
Yeah.
too famous now because Kylie has become so popular? Is that why? Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, all
It's
right.
because of Kylie. It's Kylie's fame that brought this all on.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Kylie credit. Like she's doing.
She seems so cool.
She's doing all this media. She's doing great at it.
She's very cool.
Yeah, she's really good at it.
And also, to Kylie's credit, like taking advantage of the moment. A lot of good sponsored content on Kylie's Instagram.
Yes.
Now. They're raking it in.
Yeah.
It's good.
No, but also like,
which I mean, if Jason's gonna retire, you need those extra streams of income.
You do.
Yeah. No, she supported
Which also,
women.
not for nothing. If he wants to play again, he's gonna make like $14 million. Like.
Well, isn't the timing of it's just crazy that like they did the Amazon Prime documentary thing, and then like Travis starts dating Taylor, and then now they're like all.
You're a little bit suspicious.
Oh, you think there's a script here?
I don't know. It's just like all of these things on separate brothers happening like at the same time is interesting. I guess you could just say, oh, they were both in the Super Bowl last year.
I mean,
maybe it's as simple as that.
I think what I would say is if the whole thing was planned and packaged,
yeah,
whoever did it nailed it.
Nailed the delivery.
They completely. They became like the two most famous players in the league.
Well, I can't speak to Travis. Like I don't know him well enough, but I can say from Jason's perspective, he's been deliberate about like trying everything exploring as much as he can, so he doesn't retire and looks around and is like, what now? Like so the stuff like the documentary, the podcast, some of the media, some of the corporate stuff that he's doing, like it's very deliberate on his end.
Yeah. Well, so wait, going back to that tush push really quick, I wanted to ask you guys this. That was the one where they grabbed Jalen's face mask, right?
Yes.
So that play really scared me on a lot of levels. Not really because I thought he was injured or anything, but because all of the reasons that people hate the tush push, like, were evident in that play, which is it's hard to officiate because that wasn't called, right? Didn't get called because it's hard for the officials to determine, like, what's really happening.
Good point. Yeah.
They're so close, they're so low, hard to see the action. So that was an argument to get rid of it right there because of the difficulty in officiating it. And then the safety hazard of your quarterback getting his, like, head whipped around there. So I was like, oh, no. Like, this is, I could see that specific one being used as, like, a...
You think they're going to get rid of it?
I don't think so.
I think that moment has passed, but I don't know.
I don't think so. Like, I'm not getting the vibe that it's, like, as serious of a thing as it was this time last year, being like, we must legislate this out of the game. I don't get that vibe this year. But that particular play, I was like, oh, no, they're going to put that on the, mountain of evidence. And that's why we kept seeing all the, like, offsides calls this year in alignment. Because that was, like, a point of emphasis for officials because...
Very silly.
Of how difficult that is.
So when people were making a big deal this year about Jason Kelce moving the ball, were you like, why didn't you just read my story?
Yeah, I tweeted it. I was like, hello.
Just like I was thinking a lot about your story that, like, Aaron Rodgers was so huffy about like how difficult it was to get young wide receivers involved in that offense. Yeah. He leaves, and the very next year,
same thing.
Their offense is unbelievable with all of these young wide receivers just being used correctly. Yeah, like week 1, I was at Bears-Packers, and I was like, let me not overreact here because it's week 1. And like Jordan Love was not like the Jordan Love that he was at the end of the year. He was honestly like mediocre in the game, but like I went into the locker room post-game, and I'm just talking to the rookies, and I'm like, hey, how do you feel with Jordan? Because you could just, like, sense that, like, it was totally different. And I think there were, like, 2 different young receivers who had caught touchdown passes in that game, if I remember correctly. And, so more and more kept coming as the season went on. Yes, and so I talked to them, and they were like, I'm like, have you earned his trust? Which was the exact same question that I asked the prior year about Aaron. Okay. And they were like, of course, I've always had his... Like, it was like, last year it was actually something they had to think about. He hasn't asked me to, like... inject ivermectin in front of him and like go go on a darkness retreat and talk about chemtrails. It's really freeing. So their whole last year it was actually something they had to think about before they answered. This year they're like, that's a dumb question. Like of course, like we're on the same. He's trusted me the whole time. Like we're the same age. Like whatever. So that was really interesting. And I've been trying to ask people around the league, like the thing that I really want to write about this offseason, and I don't really think it's actually going to be a good story, but it's something good to debate. It's just like, what is the best way to develop a quarterback? Once you pick the quarterback, and picking is also the hard part, but like I think the real part is like, okay, you pick the guy. The guy could become the guy, but you have to make sure that happens. So how do you develop a quarterback the right way? Because this season we saw Jordan Love, who sat for 3 years,
and who we saw improve as the season went on and became a great quarterback by the season's end. And then we saw C.J. Stroud, who just right away started, and nobody thought he was going to be good, and he just blew us all away. And so I'm trying to ask people just around the league of, like, what do you think is the best way to develop a quarterback? I talked to, like, both the backup quarterbacks here this week because they're both kind of victims of circumstance.
Blaine
Sam
Gabbert,
Darnold and Blaine Gabbert. Because Blaine, he goes...
We have a Blaine Gabbert, like Josh McCown, name all your touchdown passes video that'll come up on the YouTube page later.
So good. That's so good.
Anyway, go ahead.
Blaine, the team was sold in like week 8 of his rookie year. He's like, yeah, in one team meeting, they fired the head coach and they sold the team. And I was like, damn. And he's like, yeah, consistency is the key. So both Sam and Blaine were like, you need to have the same people around the rookie. And I just think we keep seeing teams over and over and over again mess that up.
So
Chicago's about to do it again.
It's so interesting, though, because it's hard to disentangle it, right? Because if the quarterback is good, then nobody's going to get fired.
Right.
Right? Like, and you can make the case for, okay, like Jordan Love got to sit for a long time, and that really helped him. And Patrick Mahomes got to sit for a year. Maybe that's the way to do it. But also, the reason that those guys were able to sit is because they were in healthy organizations that were able to be patient. So the chicken or the egg of it is very difficult.
Right. And it's like the teams that are in the position to draft the quarterbacks high are already, they suck, and they're already like barely surviving.
Yes.
So like if I was the Bears, just using Chicago as an example, to escape that cycle, I would have fired everyone.
Yeah.
And then brought it, like, maybe you keep Ryan Poles, but, like, I would have fired the coaching staff just with the logic of, because that coaching staff is going into this season trying to save their jobs again, right? Like, I don't think Matt Eberflus is entering the season feeling, like, super secure in his job. So if they draft Caleb Williams or whoever the quarterback is, like, you know, it's just creating the situation where, like, the coaching staff needs them to play well right away, and there's pressure, and you're rushing things. And so, I don't know, I just see it all playing out that way again.
Yeah, so my read on that is I think that there's too much attention paid to the position and not enough attention paid to the player/person, right? Like, there are some quarterbacks who would be great independent of circumstances, whether it is the way they play, whether it's their mental makeup, right? Whether it's and then there's some people who need the environment around them. So I don't think, and I think one of the mistakes that is made sometimes in coaching is to think that just because you coach player X this way, player X, not the draft prospect, just because you draft player X this way, that's the way to develop every player like that, right? And so and it's the same thing with quarterbacks. Like Patrick Mahomes would probably be an outstanding player wherever he went, but I
don't know.
You don't think so? You think that? You think Andy Reid?
Patrick Mahomes is. I
think probably I think eventually, but I don't know. I think like if he was in, because if you watch his like Texas Tech tape, I mean, he has matured so much.
You wouldn't want to hire Cliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator?
No, like he's matured so much. So I don't know. I think probably ultimately you're right, but I do think like a team could have messed him up.
It's also, from the Eagles' perspective, the question that has plagued them is not how to develop a quarterback, but how to like maintain that development. Because we have seen, we saw with Carson Wentz, and like who knows what happened with Jalen Hurts this year. But now it seems like he's at an inflection point. Is he going to get back to 2 years ago, or is it going to sort of stagnate? Like, how do you continue to get the most out of that guy?
Yeah.
Are you asking
no, I'm just saying.
That's the existential Eagles question.
And it goes back to the player person too, right? Like sometimes conditions around the player changes, whether it's their health and it affects certain things with them, whether it's the contract, whether it's the people around them, whether it's how they're emboldened within the building or not emboldened, right? Like there's so much. The thing that I've realized being around the players for the last 13 years is like how overly human these guys are, right? We talk about them as if like they're programmable machines, but like these guys will feel
Jalen sometimes talks like one though.
Sure, but these guys feel like slighted by a remark that a coach might say, by a remark that a player might say. Like they are no different than anyone else, and one thing can tilt their day or ruin their day just like that.
Yeah. What do you guys think of Well, I have 2 Eagles questions.
Okay.
Sure.
I have
one was
NFL question for you.
And I have a player X
Was Jalen really hurt this year, like more than we think he was?
I don't think he was hurt less than we think he was. So yeah. So
Okay.
I think that I don't think that he was.
Is he getting surgery? I haven't followed closely. Like, is he?
I haven't heard the
having
surgery.
any procedures done?
I would be shocked if he's not getting anything done.
Now he did play in the Pro Bowl last week, so I don't think the finger is the issue. I'm curious most about the knee. Yeah, I'm curious most about the knee.
Because I feel like he was just so much less dynamic as a rusher.
Yeah.
I mean, I from the Eagles fans' perspective, I hope that he was injured, because if he wasn't injured and the superpower of his running ability changing the offense was just taken out of the offense for other reasons, that would be a concern.
That would be bad. Yeah. And then my second question was, okay, so entering this year, how is Sirianni's job security? Like, what's the sense that you got of how
he needs to win this year?
He got half fired essentially.
Right.
So I don't think he does. I don't think it's very secure. Yeah.
If they lose in the first round next year, or they don't make the playoffs, then there'll be a new coach. In my opinion.
Actually, first round it would be hard to fire a guy for making the playoffs 4 years in a row. But yeah, it depends on the tenor of it all.
I think Jeffrey wants to see progress. I think Jeffrey Lurie wants to see progress. Yeah.
And Matt Patricia, he got fired. What's he doing now?
Well, Matt Patricia is a dynamic coach that everybody in the league would really love to ask their staff. The Eagles did decide they put him in a really difficult position, and they had decided what would be best for him would be to give him a chance to spread his wings elsewhere.
Oh my God, that's so generous.
It's so generous of them. Meanwhile, the dastardly Sean Desai is the one who really put them down. Yes, Jordan Mailata taking a picture with former teammate Alex Singleton.
Nice. A quick Prospect X question, if I can. Well, actually,
I don't have one yet. Do you have an idea?
I feel like I'm the odd man out here, or the odd person out here, because Bo has an affinity for Christian Ellis, and Christian Ellis was once Prospect X.
Let him get out of the building.
What's what cost them the season?
I mean, he was the best linebacker.
It was the inflection point of the season.
For those who don't know,
Christian Ellis is. I mean, it's a very clear
Big Dom and Christian Ellis. That's how the Eagles season went down.
Big Dom is a distraction from what really is Christian Ellis.
So
is he on Radio Row? By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if we just saw him
Ellis?
No, Big Dom.
So Kalyn does an outstanding job every year with Prospect X, where she identifies someone leading up to the draft and kind of tracks them throughout the draft, and you find out the identity after the draft. Christian Ellis was once that player. But so I was going to ask you, Bo, was at the Senior Bowl last week?
He has another brother who's coming into the NFL.
I was just going to say,
There's like 7 of them.
Yeah, a lot of Ellises.
So what's the process now? What's the process now for finding Prospect X?
Okay, so the process, I was at the Senior Bowl, and I start kind of asking around at the Senior Bowl, but it's too early because you have to wait to see who gets invited to the Combine, which I don't think they've even released it yet.
Get invited,
yeah,
right?
I need a no Combine person. Actually, this year is going to be interesting how I'm selecting because the All-Star landscape changed.
Okay.
Because before my criteria was no Senior Bowl, no East-West Shrine Game, no NFLPA, because those were the top 3 games. So I was like, okay, if a guy gets invited to the Hula Bowl or College Gridiron Showcase, that's fine. But now there's no NFLPA game. So the Hula Bowl became like the 3rd game. And so I was what I was really asking scouts at the Senior Bowl was was the Hula Bowl talent level really that of the 3rd game? And they were kind of like, no. So I think I'm going to be okay with the Hula guy. We'll see. I'm going to have to see how it pans out. So, yeah, I start asking around, right at the Combine, who's not here, who almost got in. Because you can find out sometimes, as you guys know, how many votes somebody got to go to the Combine. So if they're, right on the threshold of, 12 to 15 votes, they were right there. And it's different per position how many votes you need to get in. It's not okay, you have to get 16. It's not like that. It's, just depending on the volume of players at each position. It's different every year. But, I'll ask agents. I'll ask Jeff Foster with the Combine used to help me and tell me things, but he doesn't do that anymore, which is sad. But anyways, I check their Combine votes, and then, I just start pulling around. And then pro days you got to wait for the pro days too, because if a guy pops off and runs fast at a pro day, then it's oh, great, that's my guy. Yeah. So yeah, that's my process. So we've got a couple months to go through where I can pick one, but yeah.
Here's the thing that I want to ask you about, because we poked fun the other day at Zach not getting the invite to Roger Goodell's press conference. you got the invite.
I got the invite.
First of all, did it come in like a really nice like wedding invitation?
What if
you opened it up and it's like a pigskin ribbon.
Pop-up card,
And you have been invited to grace Roger Goodell with your presence. And how did it go?
No, it was first it was a text less than a week ahead of time. I think I was not on the original list. I think I was like on the backup or like the second list. So they texted me and were
people who aren't coming to the wedding, then you have some seats at the table.
Yeah, right. we had a couple cancellations.
Right. So
I
think
but you did not get a +1.
No, I did not get a +1. So they texted me and then you get the email later. But like it was difficult because you had to like change. Like I had to change my plans because my flight was getting in like just before because they didn't know. Yeah. Then the actual press conference itself was interesting. Like I think 125 journalists were invited, which like that's like a decent number. But you talk
that's
to
training camp in Philly, by the way.
Yeah, like you know, and I thought it actually was like more efficient than in the past because like as you guys probably remember, quiz. Who got the first question last year? Who got the first question last
Donna
year?
Kelce.
Thank you. Donna freaking Kelce gets the first question to the commissioner last year. And it was about, how do I get you on the podcast? Come on, what are we doing? Like, that's not, you know, like.
I respect the game. We've been doing that all week.
Yeah, I mean, she hustles. She hustles. But like.
That's like my number one question.
The point is, the NFL, she could not have asked that without the NFL knowing she was going to ask that.
Oh, of course.
Giving her the microphone first, choreographing the entire sideshow distraction. So this year, I actually did think it was like serious business. It was like hard questions for the commissioner. He talked for almost an hour. There was only one planted question from a Play 60 kid. So actually, the way that it was run, I'm like, okay, that was good. But
throwing shade at the Play 60 kid.
Yeah, because it's like, why? You know, I don't know. So I thought it was actually efficient.
Moms that Play 60 kids are out.
But I talked to the PFWA, which is kind of like our union, but it's not a union, you know, like representing the
got a
writers.
chapter president over here.
Yeah, here we go.
Not a very strong one.
Yeah, so, you know, we're fighting for media access.
The weakest union that there possibly is.
We're fighting for media access.
All it is just getting on our knees and begging for things.
Yeah, please let us in the locker room.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Please.
Yeah.
Anyways, the president of the whole thing, he was like, Calvin Watkins, who covers the Cowboys, he's like, anytime you have like people who are invited, people who are not, like if you have to get an invite to ask the commissioner a question, he's like, I have a problem with that. So, you know, I put that in my art. I just wrote something about that and like put that in there. And like, I think it was, I wanted to write about it because I'm like, you know, I can just see them doing this every year and just dwindles and dwindles and dwindles and dwindles.
Until it's on the NFL Network.
And it's only NFL Network employees asking questions.
And it's just a moderated panel with Goodell and whoever has the Super Bowl, whatever network has the Super Bowl that year.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
And you got to ask a question.
I did.
This was your first question to Roger?
This was my first one. I was shocked.
Were you nervous?
No. Everyone, like, I think they want you to, like, stand up to ask a question, but, like, I had my
Don't play
computer.
their game.
No, I didn't.
Don't play their game.
I was like, I'm staying seated. Yeah. So I got the mic.
It's too deferential to have to stand up.
It's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not.
Good for you.
Yeah. I just stayed seated.
It's part of the TV program. When you stand up, the camera goes on to you. So it's like.
Yeah, but don't play their game.
Right. They don't need my face.
You're a journalist.
My NIL, my name, image, and likeness. What am I getting? Anyway, so yeah, it was.
You're getting to ask him a question.
And then I love this part. You can never get a follow-up in because they immediately remove the microphone from you. But this was actually kind of funny. I was sitting next to Tush Reed of The Athletic, and he asked the commissioner about, I think it was about like the Gerard Mayo succession plan, that loophole of that you can pick your successor in a coaching contract. He was asking about that and like if that would be damaging to the Rooney Rule, like as a way that teams might be getting around that in the future. And the commissioner like said no, basically, and then Sean did actually get to ask follow-up because I was sitting next to him with the mic, and I just went like this.
Good teammate
right there. And I was like, let's go. So that was kind of fun. That was nice.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Anything you're working on this week before we get going?
I did have a story that came out yesterday that I really like how it turned out. If you want to read about the Niners, it is about Kyle Shanahan having cameras and listening in on his position coach. Which actually, you guys should look into this. I heard that Philly might also do this. I don't know. Have you ever heard that?
I haven't.
Well, okay.
Well, they tape every meeting.
Right. Yeah. But is Sirianni or
to me, that doesn't sound like a Sirianni.
No,
that sounds like
possibly
a Howie.
Howie, watching live. Because most teams will tape their installs, obviously, because then they can refer back to them.
Exactly.
If you're not there, you can catch up. If you sign a player mid-season, you can hand them, email them or whatever, their server, blah, blah, blah. So most teams do that. But the difference with the Shanahans, and it started with Mike, they watch in real time, and they're listening in real time. So, if they hear something where they're like, that's wrong.
It's kind of creepy.
They can go in, and Kyle now, because of Zoom technology, he can just unmute himself and speak into the room. And so the Niners quarterbacks were like, we call it the voice of God, because his voice will just appear.
Wouldn't you hate that as a coach?
I would hate that. The coaches that I would say 97% of the coaches that I talked to were like, we love it. It made us better coaches. It's kind of weird, but we love it.
Right.
They're like, I'd rather be on the same page as him.
But that's them on the record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't run from the fire. Run to it, right? So,
and
don't be afraid of pressure.
There were contrary opinions, but I couldn't even anonymously include because of the fear of the power of the Shanahan
Is it
tree.
only during meetings, or is it just like a nonstop 24/7 feed?
I believe it's just in meeting time.
Okay, then that's not so bad, actually.
But
if you're a coach, you had a tough day, you want to spend 10 minutes just
and you do have the ability. You can mute it.
Yeah. Okay.
If you want to stop the audio from coming out of your room, you can. Now that it's on Zoom, you can mute it. And when Mike was doing it in Denver and Washington before Zoom technology, they had a switch on the wall that you could turn off or on with the audio. And I believe in those days, it was 24/7 video happening, unless you hit the switch. And then it was now we can talk and we're muted, essentially.
Interesting.
I would say whenever I'm in a building, in the Eagles building, I just assume that they can hear me speak. Right?
Well, especially if we're in the press conference rooms with the hot mics everywhere.
Oh yeah, that's why I typically go outside.
The Bills
if you
situation
want to talk.
this year. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, you can read that on The Athletic. You can follow Kalyn everywhere.
We all silly like the mayor.